بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه وبعد. The hadith of today, we're going to be reading two hadith. عن ابن عمر رضي الله عنهما قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم الظلم ظلمات يوم القيامة متفق عليه. وعن جابر رضي الله عنه قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم اتقوا الظلم فإن الظلم ظلمات يوم القيامة واتقوا الشح فإنه أهلك من كان قبلكم أخرجه مسلم. Ibn Umar, may Allah be pleased with him and his father, narrated that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, oppression will turn into darkness on the day of resurrection. And also Jabir ibn Abdullah, may Allah be pleased with him and his father as well, narrated that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, be aware of oppression, dhulm, for oppression will turn into excessive darkness on the day of resurrection. And be aware of wattaqu shuh, be aware of stinginess or being stingy, miserness. And I will talk more about what ash-shuh exactly means. For ash-shuh, this word, which we'll talk more in detail about what it means, but one of the translation you can say al-bukhl, which is miserness, being stingy, destroyed your predecessors, yani the nations before you. Reported by Imām Muslim rahimahullah ta'ala in his Sahih. So the first hadith, hadith ibn Umar radiyallahu anhu fil Bukhari wa Muslim, and that's it will turn to a darkness in the day of judgment. This is the way Al-Bukhari rahimahullah reported it. Al-dhulmu dhulumat. In Muslim, inna al-dhulma dhulumat. Indeed, al-dhulm, injustice or oppression, will turn into darkness on the day of resurrection. Almost the same. Hadith Jabir radiallahu anh, okay, has an addition, which is the Prophet ﷺ said, and be aware of a shuh, it destroyed the nations before you. Why did it destroy them before us? The hadith continue, and this is in Muslim. It has an addition, here Ibn Hajar didn't mention it, which is the Prophet ﷺ said, so ash-shuh destroyed nations before you. حَمَلَهُمْ عَلَىٰ أَنْ سَفَكُوا دِمَاءَهُمْ وَاسْتَحَلُّوا مَحَارِمَهُم. It led them to kill one another and led them to break the rules, and they did what is haram and violated the rules of their religion. Al-dhulm, what's al-dhulm? Injustice, oppression. What's the definition of al-dhulm? Al-dhulm, al-ulama rahimahullah said, the scholar said, هو وضع الشيء في غير موضعه, is to put things where it doesn't belong. So when you put things where it doesn't belong, that's dhulm. Like for example, you've been nice to me, so you deserve to be treated nice. You deserve to be thanked. And that's what it belongs to. That's right. My parents did so much to me. They deserve to be respected. They deserve to be obeyed. If I did not treat them well, I did not fulfill the rights, and that's dhulm. That's why ash-shirk billah is the greatest form of dhulm, which is Allah deserved to be worshipped and I worship someone else. That's why also a dhulm is somebody didn't do anything and I come and abuse him, take his money or harm the person. That's all dhulm. So al-ulama rahimahullah قال هو وضع الشيء في غير موضعه تعديا, is to transgress and to put things where it doesn't belong. SubhanAllah, al-dhulm, also one of the meaning of the word dhulm, ظلمات. لذلك الله يقول ايش؟ قل من ينجيكم من ظلمات البر والبحر. Darknesses. Darkness called dhulm. The same root of the word, الظلم والظلمات have the same root, because being unfair to people, being unjust, it will lead to darkness in the dunya and the akhirah. In the akhirah, hellfire is the darkest place. And in the dunya, when you abuse others, when you abuse your power, when you're not fair to people, what happened? You became blind, subhanAllah. You don't see the justice. You don't see light. And you are far away from the truth. Anyway, الشح تقال أيضا الشح والشح. 3 ways: فتحة ضمة كسرة. And the famous one, الشح بالضم. What الشح means? الشح means is to hold back what you're not supposed to hold. Is to hold back what you were not supposed to hold. So question. If I tell you, hey, donate $5, and you said, no, I'm not going to donate. Is that shuh? No, because you're not obligated to donate. They call this bukhul, stinginess. But if I said, your zakat must be giving today, I calculated that's your zakat. And you said, no. Somebody, like your father needs from you help, your brother, your own brother. Somebody, your son needs your help. And they're not independent, depend on you, your wife. And you hold back, that's shuh. Because you must give. طيب. الشح أيضا, that's one way. Some ulama said no. الشح and bukhul the same. الشحيح والبخيل. Shuh and miserness and bukhul is the same. It's the same meaning, no difference really. Okay? They said, but the difference is this. الشح هو البخل الزائد جدا. يعني he is so stingy. Extremely stingy. When you are extremely stingy, you became shahih. So as if al-bukhul levels, al-bukhul being stingy is one level, then shahih is another level, higher level. Okay? Which is so stingy. Somebody said something else. No, in Arabic language, ash-shuh and al-bukhul, they're not the same. So they brought another concept. قالوا الشح هو منع الشيء قبل حصوله والبخل هو منع الشيء بعد الحصول عليه. Subhanallah. It's interesting. They said الشح is to hold back even before you receive it. يعني you planning, not yet, you didn't get the inheritance yet. You're going to be inheriting money. Money is coming. A deal you made and you're going to get your money. And even before you receive it, in your head, in your mind, we're never going to share anything with anyone. I'm not going to donate. I'm not going to give anything for the sake of Allah. You remember the story of the brothers who have the garden? اللي أقسموا ليصرمنها مصبحين. يعني they said tomorrow we're going to go collect the dates before the poor people comes and eat from our farm. They didn't even have the dates yet in their hand, but they already don't want to give. They said al-bukhul, it is after you receive the money or you receive the thing, you don't want to give it back because you felt how sweet it is to have it in your hand. But which one is worst? A-shuh, that you even stingy with something you didn't even have it yet. And your plan, your intention not to give from it. And they said no. There is a difference. Al-bukhul yakun fil mal faqat. Stinginess only has to do with money. But ash-shuh, it's money and other than money. So ash-shuh, it means I don't smile. I don't give advice. I don't like to help. I don't lend hand. You see, it's even in the things which is not a materialistic thing. But stinginess or al-bukhul only to the thing which is materials. And it could, Allahu A'lam, it could mean all of this. طيب. Some of the early scholars said no. Ash-shuh, it doesn't mean that. Ash-shuh, it means transgression. It's a completely different meaning. جاءوا بمعنى آخر تماما. قالوا الشح معناها الظلم والعدوان. Is to transgress. So that's why the beginning of the hadith and the end is the same. And they said what led them to say that is the end of the hadith said, Ash-shuh led them to fight one another and to kill one another. So that means transgression. And some of the scholars said that. And not necessarily Ash-shuh in most of the linguistic books, it means to hold back, is to be very tight. Okay? And usually when you are so tight, that leads you to fight for what you have. And that leads to animosity. What these ahadith means, what we learn from the hadith. Number one, al-dhulm in all forms, in all shapes is haram. With all people is haram. Al-dhulm is worst when it comes to the people who are the closest to you. You make dhulm, you're unfair and unjust to your children, to your parents, to your spouse, to your relatives, brothers and sisters, to your cousins, to your uncles, to your aunts, to your and go farther. Worst, to be unfair to your neighbors, to oppress your neighbor, to be violent, to transgress against your neighbors. Then the farther one. It's worse to be bad to be unfair and unjust to your community and the society and so forth. So the Muslim and the non-Muslims, the relative, the non-relative, the elders and the young, you cannot be unfair or unjust with anyone. And any shape and any form of injustice is haram. That's why when a man came to the Prophet, Ya Rasulullah, I give one of my children, but he said, the Prophet, did you give all your children the same? He said, no. He said, I will never witness over something like that. That's not fair. It's injustice. Even oppressions and transgression not allowed with hayawan, with the animals, with earth. You don't just go burn trees. You don't go just destroy, a green area. It's not allowed. You don't go and kill animals for fun, for no reason. It's not allowed. Injustice even with animals are haram. Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Dakhalat imra'atun an-nara fi hirra." A woman entered hellfire because of a cat. She was not fair to it. She didn't feed the cat, nor let the cat go out to look for food. She locked up the cat till death. So, you see, Sharia came to forbid any form of injustice. تحريم, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, إِنَّ اللَّهَ يَأْمُرُ بِالْعَدْلِ وَالْإِحْسَانِ. Allah ordered you to be just. And since He ordered us to be just, it means He forbade us to be unjust. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, وَلَقَدْ أَهْلَكْنَا الْقُرُونَ مِنْ قَبْلِكُمْ لَمَّا ظَلَمُوا وَجَاءَتْهُمْ رُسُلُهُم بِالْبَيِّنَاتِ وَمَا كَانُوا لِيُؤْمِنُوا كَذَلِكَ نَجْزِي الْقَوْمَ الْمُجْرِمِينَ. And now there is several verses have the same concept. وَتِلْكَ الْقُرَىٰ أَهْلَكْنَاهُمْ لَمَّا ظَلَمُوا. Yunus 13, this is Al-Kahf 59, and Al-Hajj 45. فَكَأَيٍّ مِّن قَرْيَةٍ أَهْلَكْنَاهَا وَهِيَ ظَالِمَةٌ فَهِيَ خَاوِيَةٌ عَلَى عُرُوشِهَا وَبِئْرٌ مُّعَطَّلَةٌ وَقَصْرٌ مَشِيدٌ. Here, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in these three verses telling us that He destroyed nations, societies, because of the injustice that they used to practice. And Allah warned us. He said, وَلَا تَحْسَبَنَّ اللَّهَ غَافِلًا عَمَّا يَعْمَلُ الظَّالِمُونَ إِنَّمَا يُؤَخِّرُهُمْ لِيَوْمٍ تَشْخَصُ فِيهِ الْأَبْصَارُ. Don't think that Allah is not aware of what the zalim, the transgressor, are doing. إِنَّ اللَّهَ يُمْهِلْ وَلَا يُهْمِلْ. He might wait, but He never forgets. And Abu Dharr al-Ghifari reported that the Prophet ﷺ said that Allah said, my servants, إِنِّي حَرَّمْتُ الظُّلْمَ عَلَى نَفْسِي وَجَعَلْتُهُ بَيْنَكُمْ مُحَرَّمًا فَلَا تَظَالَمُوا. My servant's injustice and oppression is something forbidden upon myself, the Almighty Allah. And I made it forbidden upon you to treat one another with, or to abuse one another, or to oppress one another. Reported by Imam Muslim rahimahullah. وفي حديث النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم في البخاري ومسلم إن الله لا يملي للظالم حتى إذا أخذه لم يفلته وكذلك أخذ ربك إذا أخذ القرى وهي ظالمة إن أخذه أليم شديد. يقول النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قرأ هذه الآية. النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم في البخاري ومسلم said Allah might wait for the zalim, for the oppressor. But when the time comes when he takes that zalim, he will take him with no hesitation. He will take him in a way that he has no escape. Yani with all the crimes that this person have committed. Then the Prophet ﷺ recited what's in Surah Hud verse 102, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala destroyed a village who its people been transgressor, his punishment for such people will be so severe. قال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم لتؤدن الحقوق إلى أهلها حتى يقاد للشاة الحلجاء من الشاة القرناء. In the day of judgment, people will settle all injustice, even animals. Allah will settle what is between them. So be careful. النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم في البخاري said من كانت عنده مظلمة لأخيه في عرض من عرضه. If you have abused someone, even if this abuse is not necessarily by taking his money, land or no, في من عرضه, يعني his honor or his feelings, or you said something bad about the person, فليتحلل منه, ask that person to forgive you today, before a day من قبل أن يكون يوم لا دينار ولا درهم, before the day would come when there is no gold or silver or benefit. If you have a good deeds, it will be taken from your good deeds and will be given to him according to the amount of injustice that you have done to the person. And if you have no good deeds to give or to be taken away from you, it will be taken from their sins and put in your sins. And you all are familiar with hadith, man al-muflis, do you know the one who is the greatest loser, the most bankrupt in the day of judgment. قال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم also واتق دعوة المظلوم فإنه ليس بينه وبين الله حجاب. Be careful from the dua of the one who been oppressed, because it goes straight to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's why Shafi'i rahimahullah said ايش قال الإمام الشافعي في أبيات شعرية له, he has a poetry famous, قال سهام الليل لا تخطي ولكن للأمد انقضاء. I forgot the first line, but he said يعني the injustice that happened to someone, the one who's oppressed, his dua is like arrows that you shoot. It takes a while to reach his distance, but for sure it will reach. That's exactly your dua when you're oppressed. Might take a while, but it will reach. It was said once in Khalid al-Barmaki, he's a minister, very famous in the Abbasi time. He was put in jail in the time of Harun al-Rashid. And he was very oppressive, powerful person, general and powerful person in the dynasty at that time in the country. Done so many bad things to people. He abused so many people. So when he was in jail, him and his children and somebody asked him, after all, he used to be the real ruler of a kingdom that goes from ocean to ocean. Can you imagine, like the Abbasi dynasty? And he ended up in jail. After all this power that he had. He used to run the show. So somebody asked him, what do you think had led you to be like this? قال دعوة امرأة مظلومة ظلمناها وما يعني غفلنا عنها. It must be a dua from a woman or a weak person that we have oppressed and we didn't pay attention to it. And Allah SWT destroyed our basically like يعني whatever we've been building all these years because of that. قال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم في البخاري مسلم that Allah said ثلاثة أنا خصمهم يوم القيامة. three people in the day of judgment, I will be their opponent. I will be the one who will personally seek revenge from them on behalf of three people. Allahu Akbar. Allah on behalf of three people will seek revenge, punishment for those three people. Who are the three people that Allah will be representing them in the day of judgment? One of them, وَرَجُلٌ اسْتَأْجَرَ أَجِيرًا فَاسْتَوْفَى مِنْهُ وَلَمْ يُعْطِهِ أَجْرًا. A person that who hires someone to do work for him, and after that person finished all the work, he said, I have nothing for you. You know, he's undocumented. He can't go and basically make a police report. He said, go. What are you going to do? I have money. I can, I have all the money that I need to hire lawyers to defend myself. Get out. I met once a person, and he told me something very, very sad. He was an undocumented worker in a Muslim country, non-Muslim countries. A miskin, he doesn't undocumented, so he doesn't papers, in other words, working illegal. And he's a painter, and he's a professional painter. He said, Shaykh Waleed, wallahi, I painted somebody's building. It cost me like 15,000 at the age, 15,000 the cost from it. The guy gave him 5, and he said, go. He said 5. And it cost me 15,000. He said, that's all I have for you. He said, what about, I lost money. You kept promising me, and I kept asking for money. I took this in credit. He said, get out of my office. Otherwise, I'm going to call the police on you. You're undocumented. And he kicked him out. But he said, Shaykh Waleed, what really hurts me is not this. What hurt me is you're going to hear next. That in my way out, I told him, ittaqillah, fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is my right, this is my work. I spent months working for you. He said, yeah, don't worry, inshallah you can take it in the day of judgment. He said, don't worry, you will take it inshallah on the day of judgment. Wallahi, when he said that to me, as if he paid me completely, I said, now I'm okay. And I walked out, never came back. Now I'm okay. It's sad. في صحيح مسلم عن امرأة بشير قالت له انحل ابني غلاما واشهد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. امرأة Bashir told her husband, why didn't you give my son so and so a servant and make the Prophet ﷺ a witness over this? فقال ابنة فلان سألتني أن أنحل ابنها غلاما. He said, my wife asked me to give her son, it's like his stepson kind of, a servant from my slaves or my servants. Then the Nabi said, his brothers, and does he have brothers? He said, yeah. He said, you're going to give all of them the same? He said, no. He said, لا يصلح فليس يصلح هذا. That doesn't work. وإني لا أشهد إلا حقا. في رواية ولا تشهدني على جور إن لبنيك عليك من الحق أن تعدل بينهم. I'm not going to be witness over injustice. Your children need to be treated fairly. But put things where it belongs. For instance, if I have a boy who is 15 years old and have a girl who is 5 years old, if I give this girl $20, she will be so happy, or $5, she will be very happy, and maybe she not even know what that money means. While this $20 maybe means nothing to him in Eid. He wants 50, you see? So also you have to understand, this is a boy, this is a girl, this is a teenager, this is a college kid, So it doesn't mean, but the concept is that you should be giving all of them. You should make them everybody where it belongs, where it fits, Um, Another thing from this hadith we learned that the greatest form of dhulm is the shirk. So if dhulm is haram, what do you think a shirk will be? That's why Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, he recited this verse when he said, and referred to, when he was asked about dhulm, that everybody commits some kind of dhulm. Then Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, no, the shirk that Allah Subhanahu wa ta'ala will never forgive is what Allah Subhanahu wa ta'ala said in Surah Luqman, لا تشرك بالله إن الشرك لظلم عظيم. الشirk is the greatest form of ظلم. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, إنه من يشرك بالله فقد حرم الله عليه الجنة ومأواه النار وما للظالمين من أنصار. الظالمين, they have no supporter in the day of judgment. الظالمين here means the kafirin. Also I want us to remember, form of dhulm that sometimes we don't pay attention to, التقصير في العبادة ظلم. Not fulfilling the rights of Allah, it's a form of dhulm. Because of dhulm, it put things where it belongs. An act of worship belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We are supposed to fulfill that right. We're supposed to be giving Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala what He deserves, which is the worship. So, since we do not fulfill that, that's a form of dhulm. That's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said about those who commit sins that this is a form of dhulm. For instance, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, ثم أورثنا الكتاب الذين اصطفينا ثم أورثنا الكتاب الذين اصطفينا من عبادنا in Surah Fatir. فمنهم ظالم لنفسه. So ظالم لنفسه. He committed dhulm by what? By not fulfilling the obligation and doing the haram. ومنهم مقتصد ومنهم سابق بالخيرات بإذن الله. Also Allah said in Surah Al-Ahzab, إنا عرضنا الأمانة على السماوات والأرض والجبال فأبين أن يحملنها وأشفقن منها وحملها الإنسان إنه كان ظلوما جهولا. Some of the ulama said, ظلوما يعني he will not fulfill the obligations. طيب. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, وَالَّذِينَ إِذَا فَعَلُوا فَاحِشَةً أَوْ ظَلَمُوا أَنفُسَهُم. If they commit indecent act or have done dhulm against themselves by sinning. وَمَن يَعْمَلْ سُوءًا أَوْ يَظْلِمْ نَفْسَهُ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said basically, أَوْ يَظْلِمْ, يعني it means he have committed sins. Right, I just messed up my point. قال معاوية رضي الله عنه إني لا أستحي أن أظلم من لا يجد علي ناصرا إلا الله. One of the worst people, I feel so bad to treat them unfairly, the one who have no one to support them but Allah. And sometimes you don't want to mess with people who have power, who have money, who have friends, you know. He said, there's one thing, but the one who doesn't have any supporter except Allah, this is the one you should be scared of the most. قال رجل لأبي هريرة إن الظالم لا يظلم إلا نفسه. قال كذبت. Abu Hurairah, somebody told him, yeah, Abu Hurairah, when someone make dhulm, commit a sin and dhulm against himself, he only hurts himself. He said, Wallahi, not true. In other words, why my sin considered form of transgression? Yes, I transgression against my body. You know why? Because my body deserved to go to Jannah. And when I commit sin, I lead myself to hellfire. I deserve to be loved by Allah because Allah created me Muslim. Allah created me in a way that He loves me. So when I commit sin, I do to myself something which it doesn't deserve. And that's why sins are dhulm, a form of dhulm. You got it? So when somebody said to Abu Hurairah, why dhulm? Why sins why dhulm? It's only hurting yourself. It's not like against someone else or something like that. Abu Hurairah said, no, even this is not true. قال والله, he said, I swear by Allah, the one Abu Hurairah's soul in his hand. إن الحبارة لتموت في وكرها من ظلم الظالم. Animals die, and birds die in their nest as a result of the injustice of some people. The injustice that's done by people, it caused corruption on earth. ظهر الفساد في البر والبحر بما كسبت أيدي الناس. الظلم affect the whole entire universe. That's what Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu was saying and swearing by Allah over it. Umar ibn Abdul Aziz, somebody wrote to him from his governors. He said, I want to build strong walls to protect my city. So Umar said, has no problem with that. But look what Umar said. قال حصنها بالعدل ونقي طرقها من الظلم. You want a strong city? Protect your city with justice, not with walls. And free it from dhulm, any form of oppression. And it will be a strong city. طاووس, هذا طاووس من كبار علماء التابعين, among the greatest scholars in the تابعين. دخل على هشام بن عبد الملك. هشام بن عبد الملك, one of the greatest Umayyads khulafa, one of the greatest caliphs among the Umayyads. So Tawus met him, or he was brought to the Khalifa to meet the Khalifa, and he said to him, اتق يوم الأذان. And he said, fear the day of Adhan. Hisham said, and what will be that day? What's the day of Adhan? And it's strange, it's not a common phrase. What's Adhan? What's the day of Adhan? He said, when this is the day where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in Surah Al-A'raf, فَأَذَّنَ مُؤَذِّنٌ بَيْنَهُمْ اللَّعْنَةُ اللَّهِ عَلَى الظَّالِمِينَ. La ilaha illallah. He said, it's the day when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, فَأَذَّنَ مُؤَذِّنٌ بَيْنَهُمْ. Adhan, it means call. That's why call to salat called adhan. He said, when a call will be made that day, the day of judgment, and it will be said, Allah's curse is upon the zalimeen, the transgressor. Be aware, because you're a ruler. Be aware to be among those who will hear that call from the angels. Hisham was so terrified that he was shaking and his face changed and he was in tears. Do you think Tawus خلاص خفف? لا. Tawus didn't remain silent when he saw he moved like that. قال يا هشام يا أمير المؤمنين, that's how you feel now from me saying you about what will happen. So what do you think when you see it with your eyes and you hear it with your ears? قال فكيف بيوم المعاينة. Now you just hear about that and it makes you so terrified. So what about the day of judgment when you see it and you hear it? Be very careful of injustice. Al-Mahdi, another caliph, Abbasi, from the Abbasi time, has a scholar, he told Rabi' ibn Abi Jahm, Rabi' ibn Abi Jahm, he was one of his governors. And he was governing, I think, Faris, which Iran today. He said, Ya Rabi', okay, آثر الحق والزم القسط وابسط العدل وارفق بالرعية واعلم أن أعدل الناس من أنصف من نفسه وأظلمهم من ظلم الناس لغيره. He said to him, be careful, always favor truth, always be moderate, always stick to justice, always be gentle with people. And you should know that the most just person is the one who is just, when it says just, to start with himself. Yani he would never do or be not fair to you because he wants something to benefit himself with. No. I will be fair against myself first. I'll be fair with myself and with other people. And he said, then the worst form of oppression is to oppress someone to please someone else. Usually when I oppress someone, to please myself. So I took his money, took Burhan's money, because I need it for me. But if I took his money to give it to Abdul Latif, and even I'm not benefiting from the money. I took his land to give it to someone else. That's one of the worst form of injustice, and one of the most foolish way. Because I don't benefit in dunya, and I don't benefit in the akhirah. In another word, he was telling him, not because you're my governor and you want to show off in front of me and to please me, you do things which is not right to the people, thinking that you will please me. That's not correct. That's the worst form of injustice. I don't need that. Al-Mahdi is a great person to study his life. Adhan? Go ahead. So, that's why from a very long time people realize that justice is the base for ruling. And injustice is the fastest way to destroy any kingdom. Ibn Hazm once said, إن الله لا ينصر الدولة العادلة الكافرة فوق الدولة الظالمة المسلمة. Ibn Hazm once said, I witness, and that's from his experience, it's true, that Allah will give a victory to a fair, just state, even if this state is kafirah, don't believe in God, over a state that, or a country, that it is Muslims, believers, but they have no concept of justice. They are abusers. Sometimes when people abuse others, they are in that height, في نشوة كذا للظلم, and fulfilling that urge inside them, because الظلم is something part of the nature of human beings. You need to fight it. You need to control it. To the extent some people said, يعني الذي لا يظلم لعلة. The one who doesn't do dhulm to others because there is something wrong with that person. And to that extent, which is not true. There's nothing wrong with the person. But it's easy for you to transgress. It's very easy. That's why it is so dangerous. It's so dangerous to invite people or to urge people or to make a space for injustice to happen. Because people can quickly turn to monster against each other. Look at civil wars. Those people used to be neighbors, used to be citizens of one country. Those people know each other. But it's so easy for you to play with people's emotion, and they will turn to monsters. And it became big fitna. And became blind, doesn't even see that he's doing something wrong. He will kill, he will abuse, he will put people in jail, he will take people's money, he will even violate like his family's rights and privacy and all evil things. And he will justify that for himself. One Palestinian brother told me once, he said, Sheikh, I was jailed in Egypt in the 80s, something like that. I was tortured. I was treated so bad. But wallahi, Sheikh, what hurt me the most was not that. And unfairly, I was picked up from the university and I was tortured and I was accused falsely with something not correct. I'm not part of it at all. Until رحمه الله عفى الله عننا عنه, Yasser Arafat was able to get him out because some family connection. He said, I still remember the day when they took me in a police car and they took me to the Gaza, to the border, to give me away. He said the Israeli soldier was the other side receiving me, and they have also some kind of, they know who he is and the Arafat basically related to him, so he will be like dignifiedly taken and to the West Bank. Anyway, he said, Shaykh Waleed, the Egyptian soldier, when he's my brother, he's my Muslim brother. When he gave me, he said, the Israeli soldiers taking me, the Egyptian, he slapped me on the back of my neck and he said, Ghur yala, or something like, and he cursed him. Get out of my country. And he slapped him. And he said, the Israeli soldier, it was very bad. It was so like hateful. And the Israeli soldier with his rifle, he pushed the Egyptian soldier back. He said, don't touch him. He entered the state of Israel. Or he's under our custody, something like that. He said, for 2 days I couldn't go to sleep. I couldn't process this. He said, for 2 days I don't understand how this can be. Injustice when it comes, when a person filled with, he's capable of not seeing what's so obvious to be wrong. That's why ظلم ظلمات. الظلم ظلمات يقول النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم. It's darkness. Don't make you see it. How many people we met in our life, we saw how unfair they are to their family, unfair to their relatives, unfair to their community members, to friends, to people. They can't see anything but the hate and the urge to revenge and so forth. From the hadith also, it shows that الشح destroy your dunya and your akhirah. يقول ابن القيم رحمه الله يعني ما أبأس البخيل. Stingy people are such losers. ابن القيم said. Why? قال يعيشون في الدنيا عيشة الفقراء ويحاسبون في الآخرة حساب الأغنياء. He said in the dunya they live like poor and in the akhirah they will judge like rich. يعني so bad. At least they didn't enjoy the dunya. Nothing. الشح, stinginess and holding back and not fulfilling the obligations, something destroy you in the dunya and in the akhirah. That attachment to the dunya leads to so many injustices because you want to get the wealth, you want to get the fame, you want to get the power. So it doesn't matter what's in this process can be done. You don't care how many people get hurt, how many people unfairly treated, how many people not been giving the rights just because I want to be rich, I want to make my business successful. I can do all kinds, I want to be politicians like who elect, I can do all kinds of things. Lie and spreading rumors, and we see in election season these days. Doesn't matter. Because the shuh is al-hirs ala dunya. I'm so committed to gain power and wealth and fame and whatever you name it in this dunya. And we talked a little bit about the bukhul and the shuh. And they are very close to each other, as I said, many different opinions. Some scholars said, just to make it even more interesting how the scholar differentiate between bukhul and shuh. They said البخل بما في اليد من مال والشح أن تأكل مال الآخرين بغير حق. هذا نقل عن ابن مسعود رضي الله عنه. Ibn Mas'ud said البخل, stinginess, is to hold what you have in your hand. Ash-shuh is to try to get what people have in other hands unlawfully. And I'm trying to get your money and keep it for myself. That's ash-shuh. And Ibn Mas'ud radiyallahu anhu arda said something in that line. قيل الشح to hold your money, البخل to hold your money, and الشح is to wish for other people's money, not really to steal it or take it from them. Just looking at it, that's shuh, which it means you're so worried about the dunya, you're looking at the dunya, you're looking at what people have there, you're just dying over it. And this opinion was something mentioned similar to that by Ibn Mas'ud, Ibn Umar radiallahu anhu arda. Al-Bukhl, some said Al-Bukhl is to hold the money that you own. And Al-Shuh is to be stingy with other people's money. And that's very interesting. How's that works? How's that work? When I hear in Houston here, somebody came to me and said, I'm very poor, I need help. I said, Habibi, but you are near to that center or that. He said, yeah, the person in charge there, give me $20. A family, a man has a family, $20, $50. Wow, $50, Sheikh. I called the person, $50, Sheikh. I said, $50, what are they going to do? For someone who has rent and bills, and what are they going to do? So that's what a shuh is, to be stingy with somebody with the money that you don't have. You're so stingy with it. It's not even your money, but you're still stingy with it. قيل البخل منع الواجب والشح منع المستحب. وهذا غلط. Some scholars said a shuh is to hold back from giving what is recommended, and al-bukhl to hold back from giving what is obligatory, and that's wrong, because the Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam said al-shuh will destroy you. Holding what's recommended will not destroy you in the dunya and the akhirah. And the Nabi قال لا يجتمع إيمان وشح في قلب مؤمن. Never be these two together in the heart of a mu'min. You're shahih and you have iman, you have faith. And here shahih, it means it cannot be the holding back the recommended sadaqah or the charity, because it's not haram not to give charity. It's just recommended. And I like what Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah said. He really said something that summarized all these opinions. فاستمع إلى كلامه رحمه الله في المدارج. قال والفرق بين الشح والبخل, the difference between الشح والبخل, أن الشح هو الحرص على الشيء والإحفاء في طلبه والاستقصاء في تحصيله وجشع النفس عليه. يا سلام. He said الشح is to care so much for something, and you exhaust yourself seeking it, and you do everything possible to have it, and you always want more of it. It doesn't matter from what way or how, but you just 100% committed to that thing, to accumulate it and to consume it or to have it. Ash-shuh. So this shows you your psychology. Okay? قال وأما البخل. As for al-bukhl, فهو منع إنفاقه بعد تحصيله. Al-bukhl is that holding off and holding back after you got what you love and what you want and what you are seeking. وحبه وإمساكه. You love it, that's why you hold it. فهو شحيح قبل حصوله بخيل بعد حصوله. فالبخل ثمرة الشح والشح يدعو إلى البخل. He said, so after you get the money and you love it or whatever you're seeking, you will hold to it and you will not give from it. So he said, ash-shuh, what led to bukhl, ash-shuh, that psychology, that mindset, what led you to hold back, what led you to be stingy. That's why, if you became stingy, you have obeyed ash-shuh, you fulfilled ash-shuh. But if you fight yourself, you love the dunya, but you fight yourself and you give, and you fight yourself, and I'm not going to hold back, and I want to give for the sake of Allah, that's basically, it frees you from الشح. قال ومن بخل فقد أطاع شحه ومن لم يبخل فقد عصى شحه. If you hold back the money, you basically fulfill the meaning of shuh. But if you give money or ilm or knowledge or wealth, whatever, you disobeyed the shuh, that that feelings, that mindset of holding back, of caring only about the dunya. قال وذلك هو المفلح, and that's the successful one. And that's what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in Surah Al-Hashr, وَمَن يُوقَ شُحَّ نَفْسِهِ. If you can, you protect yourself from your shuh, from that mindset, فَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْمُفْلِحُونَ. They are the true successful one in Surah Al-Hashr. That's very powerful, because that understanding really is very comprehensive, and it really represents the whole entire spectrum of opinions that we discussed earlier. So these are some of the points that we can learn from the hadith of today. And one of the worst character that a person can have is al-dhulm. And al-dhulm is also one of these characters that leads to so many other sins. Like before we said, al-hasad, anger. Al-dhulm leads to so many other sins. It's very complicated, because when you became unfair and unjust to people, what you do? You might kill, you might backbite, you might steal, you might prevent people from receiving what they deserve, what the obligations, what they need. You will basically, there's so many things can be done, or so many sins comes as a result of injustice. طيب, I don't know if we have any questions from the crowd. Do we have any questions, Kahari, before we go? We have 10 minutes left, or 9 minutes. طيب. Anybody from the people here has a question? Follow.
Sometimes we say ماله شحيح, but still you can spend. ماله شحيح لكنه
Yeah, شحيح قليل هنا. Yeah, his money is little, so we call shahih, because a shahih is the one who holds back. So it means very little comes out of it. So when your money, it's a metaphor, وكأنه كناية يعني على قلة المال, لأن الشح معناها القلة أو الندرة حتى. يعني ما يعطي ماء. يا الشح. Yeah. Yep. The mindset of being so consumed to have something, that feeling, that mindset is a form of shuh. And basically, jasha, it's like, I want it, I want to have it. That's originally what it is. Because some words can be used in many different forms. So, like some of them said, الشح also could means stingy. الشح يكون مرادف لكلمة البخل. But if you look deeper to the root of the word and the way it was used in Sharia, it's much bigger than just being a stingy. It is what comes before being a stingy. It's the mindset, it's the way you look at wealth, the way you see the world, the way you view it. You're so attached to the dunya, that's why you hold back. You're so controlled by this desire of having this wealth and fame and power and attached to this life. طيب. قالوا عن محمود بن لبيد رضي الله عنه قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم إن أخوف ما أخاف عليكم الشرك الأصغر الرياء. أخرجه أحمد بسند حسن. Mahmud ibn Labid radiallahu anh narrated that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, the thing that I fear most for you is the lesser shirk, the minor shirk, showing off, okay, of good deeds, الرياء. related by Imam Ahmad rahimahullah with a good chain of narrator. Imam Ahmad rahimahullah narrated this hadith and there is addition into it. يقول الله عز وجل لهم يوم القيامة. Allah will say to such people in the day of judgment, the people who do riya, who show off their good deeds, إذا جزى الناس بأعمالهم. When after each one gets rewarded for their deeds, those who showing off, they said, Ya Allah, what about our deeds? We did so much too. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will tell them, اذهبوا إلى الذين كنتم تراءون في الدنيا فانظروا هل تجدون عندهم جزاء. You want a reward for your deeds? Go ask the one that you showed off in front. That's, you did these deeds for them to show off in front of them. Go to them, let them reward you today. Allah will tell those people. Go seek from them a reward today. And also this hadith reported by Al-Bayhaqi. Mahmud ibn Labid, ibn Uqbah, ibn Rafi', ibn Imra' al-Qais, the famous sha'ir, ibn Zayd al-Ansari, al-Awsi, al-Ashhali, al-Madani. He is from al-Ansar. قال ابن عبد البر هو يعني اختلف فيه هل هو له صحبة أم لا. There is a debate over Labid, Mahmud ibn Labid, if he is a companion or not. And many of the ulama said he is because he was older than Mahmud ibn al-Rabi'. You have Labid ibn al-Rabi', Mahmud ibn Labid. Then you have also Mahmud ibn al-Rabi'. Mahmud ibn al-Rabi', many ulama consider him companions because, and al-Bukhari rahimahullah mentioned him in Sahih, حتى يقول إني أحفظ مجة مجها النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم بوجهه. I still remember the Prophet was making wudu and he had water in his mouth and he sprayed it in my face and I was like, you know, shocked. He was a kid, but he still remembered that. And the Sahaba radiallahu anhum, and he was considered Sahabi because he met the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He was aware that this is the Prophet. He understands that this is the Prophet. So he fits to be a companion, but he's a very young companion. So Mahmud ibn Rabi' al-ulama accept him as a companion. If Mahmud ibn Labid older than him, so most you should also accept him as a companion. That was the argument of Ibn Abdul Barr rahimahullah ta'ala. Some ulama said no, he's not a companion, he's a successor like Ibn Hibban or Abu Hatim. But Al-Imam al-Bukhari rahimahullah and Ibn Abdul Barr, Al-Imam Ahmad rahimahullah, all of them consider him as a companion. And Ibn Hajar rahimahullah said something kind of moderate. Ibn Hajar said it doesn't matter. Even if he said he's not a companion and he's a successor, anything that he reported, he only took it from the Sahaba. He never reported anything from other than the Sahaba. Why all this story? Like why I'm even bothering you with all this? Because if we said he's a companion and he told us the Prophet said, okay, or talk about things the Prophet said or happened to the Prophet, it means that I take it from him directly because either he heard it from the Prophet directly or he heard it from another companion and it will be acceptable. But if we said he's a successor and he said the Prophet said or did, I cannot accept it until I know who he heard it from exactly. Because that person in the middle between him and the Prophet, I need to know who he is. Because a successor can report a narration from another successor. And I don't know the other successor which is accurate in his memory or not. But a companion, if he tell me something about the Prophet and I know 100% he wasn't there, I still accept it. Why? Because a companion took it from another companion. Yani when Abbas tell me the Prophet Mecca did that, he wasn't even born yet. Or Abu Hurairah wasn't even Muslim yet. But I know that he heard this from the other companions. That's why, by the consensus of the scholars, marasil al-sahabati ba'dhum an ba'd maqbula. It's acceptable if the Sahabi said the Prophet did that. I don't need to know who was the middle between them. But if a successor said that, no. Why? Because the successor, not necessarily that he heard it from a Sahabi, he could have been heard it from another successor. And I don't know what that person is. Is he trustworthy? Is he weak in memory? I have to check. But all the Sahaba, the narration are acceptable. That's why there is this debate sometimes over the person. Is he a Sahabi or not? It's important for us to know. And Ibn Hajar rahimahullah said, even if we say he's a young Sahabi, a very young Sahabi or a Tabi'i, it doesn't matter because he only narrated a hadith from the Sahaba, never narrated anything from other than them. طيب كان له 3 أولاد وبنتان. He had 3 children, 3 boys and 2 girls, all died. And انقرضت ذريته سبحان الله, يعني his lineage ended. يعني he died in 96 in Medina, and his father Labid ibn Uqba, he's a Muslim as well, his father, and his father is the old man who said, Ya Rasulullah, I can't fast. So Allah revealed the Quran that we enjoy today and recite today, that if you can't fast, you feed for each day. If you're old and sick and you can't fast, you feed instead of that day a meal. That rule came in relation to his father, who asked the Prophet ﷺ what he should do if he can fast because of sickness. So next inshallah week we'll talk about what's ash-shirk al-asghar, the minor shirk, and what that concept means. And ar-riya is just one example of a shirk al-asghar. It's not a shirk al-asghar is ar-riya only. No, it's just one form of it. هذا يسمونه التفسير بالتمثيل بالمثال, an example. Next week inshallah we'll talk more about that, and we understand what that concept means and what's the definition for it. Insha'Allah ta'ala, we'll talk about al-riya and al-ikhlas, and what is considered riya, what's considered not riya, and how a person can protect himself from such things. And you heard what the Prophet said. And he said this not to Waleed Basyouni, not to Shaykh Ibrahim, not to Azad. He's saying this to As-Sahaba radiallahu anhu. He said to the companions, the thing that I fear the most for you, and even some ulama said it could be I fear the most for the ummah, for you and the ummah after you, and the nation after you, is this. So that's something we should pay attention to. That's something that's a concern for us. We should understand it, learn about it, and educate ourselves about it. Inshallah, hopefully, we'll do that next week, inshallah ta'ala. جزاكم الله خير. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت